welcome back to my channel. My name is Amanda, and in today's video, we're gonna be making 5 different syrups to flavor your coffee. Now, I just got an espresso machine, so if you didn't know, check out the video that I will link somewhere up here, and you can see my unboxing and review of my brand new espresso machine. So I really felt like I needed to make a little something to go along with that machine. So here we are. I have decided to make 5 different coffee syrups. So we have sugar cookie syrup, brown sugar syrup, toffee nut syrup, which is my personal favorite, cinnamon, and white chocolate mocha. So if you're interested in spicing up your coffee, stay tuned. Let's get started. So then we are going to be making a cinnamon dolce type syrup, a sugar cookie type syrup, a white chocolate mocha, and a toffee nut. And I think there's one more, but I can't remember right now, so we'll see as we go. So here are the bottles that I got for our syrups. They're 8 ounces, which I thought would be pretty good for this project because I am making a variety. They come with the spout, or not the spout, the pump, but they also came with lids that you could put on if you didn't want to use the pump. And I will link this particular set that I got in the description box below. Okay, so for this first recipe, we're gonna be making brown sugar syrup. And I think this is probably like the simplest one just because it's only 2 ingredients. So the first thing we're gonna do is heat our 1 cup of water over medium-low heat until it reaches a boil. And then once it's boiling, we're gonna whisk in our brown sugar and pretty much just stir it until it's dissolved. Okay, so our water is almost at a boil. So just to recap this recipe, it's 1 cup of water and 1 cup of brown sugar. So it's super simple. And once the water is heated up, you're just gonna add your 1 cup of packed brown sugar. I kind of figured that would clump out like that, but it's fine. Into the almost boiling water, and you want to stir it constantly until all of the sugar granules are dissolved. You want to stir it constantly so it doesn't burn, and you want to make sure that your water is not boiling but hot enough. If the water is too hot, it will kind of burn the sugar and it'll just taste like burnt instead of sweetness. So I'm going to continue to whisk this until all the sugar is dissolved, and then I'll show you the final product. Okay, so it's been a few minutes. The recipe said this takes 10 minutes, but it did not take 10 minutes for me. So everything is nice and dissolved. I'm gonna turn off the heat and actually move this off the burner, and I'm gonna let it cool down for just a few minutes before we put it into the jar. So this next recipe is going to be a toffee nut syrup. So I'm going to be using these Heath toffee bits and raw sugar in place of the brown sugar like we did for the previous recipe. This recipe, I'm actually gonna half it just because I'm gonna have so much syrups. So I'm gonna use a 1/2 cup of water, a 1/2 cup of toffee pieces, and a 1/2 cup of the raw sugar. So we're gonna begin the same way by heating up the water, and then once it's warm, we'll dissolve the toffee and sugar. So I ended up moving this to my back burner, which is a little bit smaller. It's just a little inconvenient to reach, but the front burner was way too hot and I didn't want to burn the sugar since this one is going to simmer for a little bit longer than the brown sugar. That way we can dissolve some of those toffee bits. And if you can see, there is considerably less bits of toffee so far, so that's great. Okay, so it has been about 10 minutes and the syrup definitely has thickened up. There's still a few little bits of toffee. So I think I'm gonna whisk it for another minute and then we're gonna set this aside and let it cool for 15 before we put it in our jar after we strain it. Okay, so returning back to our toffee nut syrup, I have just a metal mesh strainer and I put a coffee filter in it because these holes are still kind of big and I don't want to get any of the toffee chunks in the actual syrup. And then our syrup itself has been cooling for about 10 minutes. So hopefully this works. I'm just gonna pour it into the coffee filter and hope that the syrup itself drains through. All right, so this isn't really working. The coffee filter, I think, is just too thick. So I'm just gonna try and let it go through the strainer and hope for the best. That worked pretty well. I think I just might run it through a couple times and see how that turns out. It was a good thought though. Okay, so while our toffee nut syrup is cooling, we're gonna work on the sugar cookie syrup next. So for this recipe, we'll need 1 cup of granulated sugar. We'll also need 1 cup of water. We'll need a 1/4 teaspoon of butter flavored extract, 1/8 teaspoon of almond extract, and then 1 teaspoon of vanilla extract. And we're gonna pretty much make this the same way, water and sugar in a bowl, bring it to a boil, lower heat, simmer 10 for 15 minutes, dissolve it, and then we're gonna remove the pan from the heat, add the extracts and stir, and then store. So for the sugar cookie syrup, I decided to pre-measure the flavorings, and I'm just gonna put them in this little bowl. That way I can just dump them all in at once when it is time. Okay, so the simple syrup has been simmering for about 10 minutes. It has thickened up and all of the sugar is dissolved. So I think that now is a good time to turn it off of the heat. And then we can whisk in our extracts, which we previously measured out just to make it easier. Dump those guys in. Give it a little stir, and then we'll let this one cool for a few minutes, and then we will add it to our bottle. Okay friends, so lastly we are going to make our cinnamon cinnamon syrup. And sorry, I forgot to hit record as I was adding the ingredients, but this one calls for 1/2 cup of water, and we're gonna do 1/4 cup of brown sugar and then 3/4 cup of regular sugar, in addition to 1 teaspoon of cinnamon. So we're going to simmer this on medium heat, soft boil, stir, 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 and then we are going to put it into our jar once everything is dissolved and cooled. And then I don't think I mentioned this yet, but all of our syrups, we want to store them in the fridge. That's going to help keep them fresh the longest, and they should last for a few months. So I haven't made any of these except for the brown sugar before, and keeping it in a sealed container in my fridge, it did last for a few months, which honestly, I'm going to drink them, so they're not going to probably stay in my fridge for that long. But if you didn't drink it super often and you wanted to store them for a long time, as long as you keep them in the fridge, they will last quite a while. Okay, so for our last recipe, we're gonna be making white chocolate mocha, and this one has the most steps, so I saved it for last. So there's a couple different recipes that I found. I'll link the ones that I found below along with everything else. This recipe calls for 4 ounces of white chocolate, 1/2 cup of half and half, 1/4 cup of evaporated milk, and 1/4 cup of sweetened condensed milk. Now, here's what's up. I don't have half and half, but I have heavy cream, whoops, and I have 2% milk. So what I'm gonna do is I'm going to use the 2% milk and the the heavy whipping cream for the milk part, and then the sweetened condensed milk, because I don't wanna go to the store. So we'll see what happens. All right, so everything is melted. I'm going to turn off the heat because I don't want it to burn. You can see I dripped a little bit of something on there and that burned already, but it is nice and combined, and we're just gonna let it cool for a little bit and then we'll add it to our jar. All right, you guys, we made our brown sugar syrup, our toffee nut syrup, our sugar cookie syrup, our cinnamon dolce, and our white mocha. So all of these syrups, you want to let them cool down completely before you seal them up. So I'm going to let these sit on the counter for a little bit to cool down. put the pumps in, and then put them in the refrigerator. And these all can be stored in the refrigerator in sealed containers for a few months. The recipe for the white mocha did say that if it does get too hard or separate, give it a good shake, and then you could always microwave it for a few seconds to melt it again. So I might do some labels for these so I remember which one is which, but I will come back and check in with you guys once they are cooled and we will put them away. So you guys, I hope you enjoyed this video. We have our sugar cookie syrup, our brown sugar syrup, our toffee nut syrup, our cinnamon syrup, and finally our white mocha syrup. These all look and smell delicious, and I can't wait to make coffee creations with you guys. Stay tuned for a future video where we will use these ingredients to make some awesome coffee recipes now that I have my espresso machine. So if you liked this video, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. Let me know what you think of these recipes in the comments below. Consider subscribing, and I can't wait to see you guys in the next video.